Welcome to the Don't Let the Smile Fool You podcast, where we're talking about everything happening beneath the smile as you climb the leadership ladder. Let's go. Have you ever watched the movie The Devil Wears Prada? You know, the movie about the fashion magazine, and the boss is Miranda. And when Miranda comes to work, everybody's like running around, they're scared to get on the elevator. Well, I think that movie is about leadership. Let me explain why I'm talking about Miranda. So, many years ago, I was in charge of a department, and, I thought I got along really well with my team. We were really great, we performed greatly, we used to have great parties on the floor, all of this good stuff. And then one day, I take my team out, right? We're celebrating something, we take my team out and wine or two, just sort of letting our hair down. And a few things came out from that dinner. Number one, they told me that they could tell from the height of my shoes whether I was going to be in a good mood or not. What are you talking about? Oh, Uche, when you come to work, we take a look to see how high your heels are. The higher the heel, stay clear. If you're in flats, she's in a good mood. If she's in really high heels, stay out of her way today. I was like, you know what, you guys are nuts. There's no way I'm making a decision on what shoes I wear because I'm not in a good mood. And they were like, yeah. You don't know it, but we read you really well. And they told me, second thing they told me, I think one of them said, people are scared to get on the elevator with you. What? I'm so nice. I say hi to everyone. Now, why am I talking about this? Do you think Miranda knew causing fear in the organization? I'm not sure she was even aware. And a lot of times as leaders, team leaders, CEOs, managers, we think our behavior says one thing, but actually it has a completely different impact on the organization. Case in point, many years ago, I just loved to wear high heels. And I thought that coming to work in my favorite shoes just meant I was coming to work in my favorite shoes. For my team, it was anxiety, right? So they saw me coming in and I'm thinking, oh, I look nice today. But for them, it was, oh my goodness, we're gonna have a really rough day. Can you imagine someone walking into the organization and creating fear everywhere? I think the other thing for me that was really interesting was I am naturally a shy person. So I'm always hesitant to be the first person to speak. Even today, when I get onto an elevator, I'm much better at now. I say good morning to everyone, but I am just naturally shy. So it's difficult for me when I'm in these public settings. People took that to mean that I was unfriendly, and that you couldn't be on the elevator with Uche, or you couldn't talk to her. Or even worse, people were afraid to come to my office. They're like, don't go too close to her office. I kept trying to figure out what made people think that way. So that was the first thing. One was, I had these things I was doing that was unintentionally creating a different impact than I expected in the organization. And I didn't know that. And I happened to stumble on it just because I took my team out to dinner. Example number 2. I'm always telling people, I am so direct, I give feedback, I tell you exactly how I think, so people are 100% clear where they stand with me all the time. And this is what I think is one of my strengths. I promise you, like if you ask me, what's one of your strengths as a leader, I tell you, I'm super direct. I tell you this, and this, I like this, or I don't like this. If I'm not happy about something, you know it. So this is my impression of my style of leadership. Well, let me tell you, I got some feedback a few years ago, again, different organization, and I was saying to, is a strength is the fact that I'm very direct. And she was like, And I was like, what do you mean? What does that mean? She was like, I don't think you're as direct as you think. Yeah, I am. Of course I am. And she said, no, I think you think you're direct, but you leave a lot for interpretation. She was like, let me give you an example. When people are doing a presentation, you have tics. What do you mean tics? She's like, you click your pen. You click your pen means you're getting impatient. But clicking the pen to someone who doesn't know you means nothing, right? So you're just clicking a pen. For the person who's presenting, they're probably thinking, wow, why is she being so rude, or what does that mean? The second thing you do is when you disagree with something in the presentation, I can't believe I'm going to tell you this because I still do this till today. So what you say is, wow, that's interesting. Oh, how interesting. Interesting. And if people really know you, how interesting or interesting means something completely different. For the untrained Uche person, it may mean, well, that's an interesting point. But you are saying, what are you talking about, right? And so after working with you for a while, people know that interesting means violent disagreement. But most people may not understand that. And so you think you're being direct when you say, well, that's really interesting, because perhaps you're saying that sarcastically. But for many people, they don't get that, and they don't get the cue. I have to tell you, I was really shocked, because I've spent many years thinking that. And so she gave me an example of a guy who came to present, and I listened to the presentation, and I asked questions, and I kept saying, well, that's really interesting, how interesting. And he came out of that presentation, and he was like, saying to someone like, oh, it really went well, Uche really liked the presentation, I'm really happy about this. And the other person said to him, well, what did she say exactly? And he said, oh, she kept saying that, that's interesting. And the guy was like, she hates your presentation. Can you imagine? Unintentions. It's not a real word, but I'm gonna tag this word, like unintentions, like the things that we do as leaders and managers that create unintentional consequences, unintentional thoughts, things that you're not even trying to do, but intentionally, but creates unintentional consequences, impacts on your organization. So now I've had this feedback twice, and I'm now trying as a manager of people, to be more direct, to make sure that the things I say and do does not have unintended impact in the organization. And once again, here I am today. I think, I've done a really good job. I've worked on myself. I've tried really hard to take on the feedback that my team gives to me, and I create opportunities for my team to give feedback, both informally and formally. So, I think I've really worked well on myself, and I am no longer creating unintentions in my organization. Guess what? Just last week, can you imagine? Last week, I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues. She will remain nameless, but I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues last week, and I was telling her a story, sent a series, not just one, a series of WhatsApp messages to someone, and they had not responded. And I was absolutely horrified by this behavior. I said to her, I cannot believe this person has not responded to me. I really needed a response. They didn't respond to me. I don't understand. How can people behave like this? I went on a rant. I went on a rant for several minutes about this behavior of just not acknowledging a WhatsApp message. This was her reaction. Huh? What, Uche? I'm sorry. What did you say? Are you complaining about someone not responding to your WhatsApp message? And I was like, yeah. I needed an answer from that person, and they didn't respond to me. I just don't understand why anyone would behave like that. She was like, what? Uche, you do that, right? I'm sorry. She's like, yeah. She's like, actually, you're notorious for it. She said, we send you WhatsApp messages, and sometimes you don't respond. She's like, not all the time, obviously, but sometimes you don't respond. And I was like, yeah, but when you send me a WhatsApp message for information, I take it as information. I don't see a need to respond to it because I've acknowledged that you sent me a WhatsApp. I've read it, and it doesn't necessarily need a response. She's like, no. Actually, when you don't respond to the WhatsApp message, it creates this whole series of events. Anxiety. Did she get my message? Has she seen my message? Why is she not responding to my message? Does she absolutely hate what I had to say? Does she agree? Does she disagree? And so it's just, a simple thumbs up could kill all of that. But instead, there are questions. You're kind of going through the motions of, what does this mean? What does the non-response mean? Why are they not responding? She said, similar to what you're describing. And you do it all the time. And I was like, oh my goodness, unintentions again. I am not intending to create anxiety for anyone, just as I hope and I'm sure this individual that I had sent a message to was not looking to create anxiety for me, but it was creating some sort of anxiety for me. So what's the message today? I think as managers, as leaders, we have a lot of work to do, I understand it. But as managers of people, we really have to be careful not to create unintentions, right? The idea that just because you're a bit shy, people may think you're unfriendly. And, I remember someone saying to me, you didn't say good morning to me. And I was just like, I wasn't present. I had an issue at home. So a lot of times, these things that we take for granted can create unintentions. I'm using this word. I know it's not a real word. Don't tell me. I know. But can create unintentions, right? And how do we do that? How do we ensure that we don't create these unintentions in the organization, for our team members, for people around us? I think the thing that has helped me, and I just gave an example, is that you absolutely have to create an organization where there's space for feedback, even at the highest levels. My colleague this week felt very comfortable, first of all, looking at me like this, and then saying to me this is something that you also do. And so it's something that I immediately recognized that I needed to work on. So creating that space in the organization where people can give you feedback, no matter the level, is really important. And the way that you do that, I think, is really intentional, right? I gave the example of taking my team out for these informal events. I think that's really helpful, where people can let their hair down. And so they get a little more comfortable and they can say things to you that perhaps they wouldn't normally say. And on the formal side, whenever I have my one-to-ones, I'm always asking at the end of the one-to-one where we give feedback, I say, look, give me some feedback. What can I do? And even though people may not take you up on it all the time, I think when it matters, they recognize that they can. So, unintentions. I'm not Miranda, I promise. I don't want to be Miranda, but I hope today that you can just self-reflect and take a look at whether or not you're creating unintentions in your organization as well. And if you are, if you recognize that you are, make sure you create a really open environment where people can give you that feedback as well. I promise you, it will be helpful. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the Don't Let the Smile Fool You podcast. I hope you found it really, really interesting. But more importantly, I hope you're still smiling. See you soon.